With the holidays right around the corner, you guys know what that means. It's time to start cranking out some more Christmas decorations. And in today's video, we're going to be doing just that. You know, with the holidays coming up in the next few weeks, this is the point at which my wife busts out all her holiday decorations. And of course, when she was doing that, getting all her trinkets out, making the house feel real festive, one of our friends saw this cute little snowflake that I put together a few weeks ago. Well, of course, they wanted one. So today, we're going to be building them this snowflake, and I'm going to show you guys how we do it. Now, if you guys would like to see how I built these Christmas trees, I do have a video on that. All the plans are included in that. And again, in all my videos, the plans are free. Now this project's only going to require one 12-foot board, which makes it affordable and easy to put together. Now in the plans that I have in the description below, again, all my plans are going to be free on this channel. I initially said that this board is going to be a 1x4. Well, that means we would have to rip down the board and do a lot of sanding, and I just don't feel like doing that today. So I picked up a 1x3, which will prevent us from having to rip the board. It just means that snowflake's going to be a little bit skinnier than what I initially planned in the plans. Now, if you guys are like me and hate sanding, you guys can pick up a higher quality piece of wood, which is what I did here. I picked up this select pine from a big box store, which means it's pretty smooth. There are no knots in the wood. It's a very clean piece of wood, but that means you're going to pay a little bit more money for it. Now, if you guys are trying to sell these and make profit on them, you guys can go with the cheaper wood that has a little bit of knots and a lower quality, but then you're just going to have to sand it down. And I hate sanding so much that I'm deciding to go with the better piece of wood. That way I can avoid it all in all. Now to get started, I'm going to work with the middle part of the snowflake. I'll put a little picture up here and I'll circle it so that way you guys know which part I'm cutting. It measures out to 20 inches long, so I'm going to grab my tape, measure out 20 inches, and we'll make that first cut. Alright, so now that we got our first piece cut, we're going to go ahead and move on to the other pieces. Alright, so for the next part of the snowflake, we're going to be working on the arms. Those will all measure out about 10 inches long. Again, I'll put a picture up here and circling them. We're going to get those cut out, and since they are repeat cuts, I'm going to go ahead and set up a stop block. That way I can just print these out and get them done in no time. Alright, so now that we have the main board cut and our 4 outside arms, it's time to move on to the funner stuff, which is the smaller pieces. So now I'm going to start cutting the outsides of the snowflake, the small little green arms on the plans. We need 12 of these, 3 inches long. We're going to set up our stop block again and get them all cut out. Now that we've got the small outside arms of the snowflake cut, we're going to go ahead and move on to the inner parts of the snowflake. So moving on to the last 2 pieces of the snowflake that need cut, we're going to be working on the inner pieces. Now we need 6 at 4 1/8, and we also need 6 at 3 3/8. So with this smaller piece here that I have, I'm actually going to use the 3 3/8 cuts on these ones. That way I don't waste any wood or any material, and I can make sure that I get all the parts that I need for this board. Alright, so now that we have all of the pieces cut to our snowflake, it's time to move on to the fun part, and that is putting a bevel on a lot of these pieces. I hope you guys are good at cutting bevels, because if not, you're going to get a lot of practice at doing it. So to start, we'll be cutting the 10-inch arms, and we'll be putting a 30-degree bevel on one side. Now, since again, these are repeat cuts, I'm going to set up my stop block so I can just get them cut out. So I'm going to rotate my saw over to 30 degrees. And something to note as well, when you rotate your guys' saws, you got to remember that you have to move your fence in and out, because we do not want to clip this fence with our blade, because at that point it's a bad day. So with this 30-degree cut, we're trying to keep the miter at the end of the board. We want to make sure we try to maintain the length of the board so that way everything measures out correctly at the end. So before I get started cutting the outside arms of the snowflake, a couple things to note. I tried keeping this plan pretty simple. Again, I'm not the originator of this design, but I could not find plans for it, so I built them myself, and I kept all the angles at 30 degrees. That way it's simple, it's easy, and again, it's very beginner friendly, and so that's the reason I kept all the angles the same. A second thing to note is when you're cutting these smaller pieces and you don't feel comfortable doing it on the miter saw, you could try doing it other methods, maybe through the table saw, or trying to find a better way to do it through the miter saw here. But again, I found this to be the easiest and quickest way to just cut these out, especially since we got 12 of them to do. Last thing, make sure you cut the right side of the board. Don't ask me how I know. So with the outside arms of the snowflake, it's the same thing as the 10-inch snowflake arms. We're going to be cutting a 30-degree bevel on the one side, and since we already have our miter saw set up from the 10-inch arms, we're just going to be able to cut these out without having to make any adjustments. Now that we got the outside arms of the snowflake all beveled and ready to go, we're gonna move on to the inner parts of the snowflake. Now the only difference between these two is that it requires a 30-degree bevel on both sides, and you need to make sure that both sides of those cuts are parallel with each other. We don't want them going towards each other. And with our miter saw still set up for 30 degrees from the previous cuts, we can just set this up, ready to go, and just start cutting. Now this is what I mean when I was saying parallel lines. We want these two end grains, or the two cuts that we just made, the bevels, to go with each other. We don't want them coming to each other at a point, if that makes any sense at all. Now with all of our pieces cut and everything all beveled, we are ready to start assembly. Now this next part is optional, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it before I start assembling. I'm gonna go ahead and apply a stain. It is much easier to apply a stain to this thing before you put it together and it looks like this, and you have to get your hand all up in these crevices and all through these small little tiny cracks trying to get every single piece. It is annoying. Don't do it. Trust me, I know, because when I put that one together and stained it up, it was a pain in the butt. So we're gonna go ahead and get these stained up. I might hit some of these pieces with a little bit of a sander. There are some rough edges on them, but after that, I'll get them stained up and then we'll start assembly. All right, with our parts all sanded down and ready for staining, I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with this dark walnut. Again, you guys can use whatever kind of stain you would like. My wife and our friend want this dark walnut, so that's what we're gonna give them. All right, so now that we've given this stain some time to dry, it is finally time to put this thing together. I've seen a couple other videos on YouTube, and most of them don't really go into detail on how to put it together, especially using these brad nails. And getting the brad nails in some of these corners is kind of tricky. And so I'm gonna show you guys the best way that I've found on putting this together. All right, to start, I'm gonna take my main board and I'm gonna measure center on this board. This center is going to act as a point on where we set these long 10-inch arms. Marking the other side of the board as well, because when we put these arms together, we're going to need a reference point for them. So before I start nailing these 10-inch boards to the main board, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 2-inch piece of scrap. And on this 2-inch piece of scrap, I'm going to set it flush with the outside of that board, and I'm going to make a line. What that line represents is the smaller outside parts of the snowflake. We're going to use that 2-inch reference line, and that's where we're going to nail these little pieces together, so that way it looks, you know, even all the way around. And we're going to do that with both sides of the board. So taking one of these 10-inch boards and that 2-piece of scrap, I'm going to mark both sides of the 10-inch board with that 2-inch mark. That way when we go to attach these smaller little pieces, we know exactly where to put them and we don't have to second guess. So I'm going to be using a 1/4-inch brad nails, and I'm going to be using some wood glue to keep it all together. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our long board, we'll set it vertical, and then again, using that reference line, we'll take our 10-inch arms, we'll line that up with some glue and shoot some brad nails through this first arm. Now once you get that first arm attached, I figured out that the easiest and best way to put this together is do a caddy corner from the one we just put on. Instead of taking the second 10-inch arm and doing that one, yeah, you can easily shoot a brad nail through this side, but putting these other two on the other side just makes it that much more complicated. So we're going to take our other 10-inch arm and we'll do a caddy corner one and put that one on right there. So once you're to the point where you have 2 arms on, we're going to take another one and we're just going to pick a side of the board. We're going to take that third arm and we're just going to glue it up and set it up in the corner, and we're going to take our brad nailer and shoot a nail through the opposing side, and then that will connect with that third arm. And just like that, we got our third arm attached and ready to go. Now, for this last one, this is the most tricky and challenging one yet. If you guys find a better way to do it, let me know in the comment section below. But from what I found by putting 2 of these things together, the easiest way to do it is just to glue it up, and we're gonna shoot a brad nail. As much as I don't like doing this, we're gonna shoot a brad nail through the face of this main board and just kind of shoot it at an angle to really attach it. And just like that, we got all 4 arms all put on. Now, this last arm that we put on is going to be a little wiggly, but that's all right, because once we put these cross members in the middle and start to really put the snowflake together, it'll add more strength and prevent them from wiggling and becoming all loose. The next part of this project is going to be putting these center cross members in. I found it easier to put those in first putting these in here just like that will add not only strength to these other long arms on the outside, but then once we get to the point where we're putting these smaller little flakes on, again, it just prevents these from wiggling around and it keeps it from falling apart. So we'll take one of the longer ones and one of the smaller ones, we'll glue them up and shoot a couple brad nails through this outside, and then we'll come in and we'll put them in just like that, and then we'll shoot some brad nails through the sides of these long 10-inch arms. And just like that, we got the center for our snowflake, and I'm gonna go ahead and just make the rest of them real quick. So now that we got our centerpieces all built and ready to go, we're just gonna go around the snowflake and start putting them in and nailing them in. Now, when you're getting to the point where you're putting some of these cross members in here that are all butting up against each other, the easiest way I found to drive brad nails through these is going through the inside instead of coming in through the other side of this, of each long arm. It's better just to go through and try to angle it into the long arms rather than going from the long arms in. All right, so once you get done driving your last brad nail and get all these inner pieces all attached, this thing should be a lot more sturdy. It shouldn't really be wiggling too much. Now, obviously, with all these angles, all these different cuts, it is going to be kind of hard to get this thing to line up perfectly. It's almost impossible. So when you're putting this together, you might have to twist some boards a little bit, add a little bit more pressure, and kind of really drive, maybe even add an extra brad nail or two just to keep it together. But we're finally to the part where we're going to be adding the outside arms. Now remember, when we drew that 2-inch mark, that is where we're going to place these outside arms. We're going to add some glue, and we can attach the first ones no problem. Obviously, just drilling a brad nail through the sides without having too much problems. The real trick is when we come to these second ones. You're going to come in, it might be easier to show it from up here, but you're going to come in through the angles on the outside to attach them. If you can't, for any reason, get those attached, you can always do it through the face, but I would try avoiding that as much as possible just because I think having brad nails stick out through the face just makes it look not as clean. And just like that, we got ourselves a Christmas decoration snowflake. Now don't be fooled, this thing definitely was a challenge to put together with all the different cuts, all the angles, and all the small pieces that go into it. It definitely is not perfect, but hey, that's a part of the learning process. Now if you guys are interested in following along with the plans or this video, they are linked in the description below. Feel free to use them. Again, all the plans on my channel will always be free no matter what, because at the end of the day, I feel like people deserve to have and build nice things without having to pay for them. We are at the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed this kind of content, you know what to do. Hit the like, share, notification bell, all that good stuff. It really does help support the channel, and it really does help grow the community, and I hope you guys did enjoy it. And if you guys want me to build something, put it in the comment section below. I'll look it up, and if it doesn't have plans, I'll make it, and then I'll make those free plans as well. But until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. God bless.